So how do you want to do this? Because we've essentially spoken about everything for the last week.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how we're going to like cover new ground, but I guess probably helpful just to talk through from start to finish your experience of the race, like maybe even starting prior, and then kind of recapping your nutrition strategy.
Yeah, for sure. So where do we start? Well, I mean, the day before the race was basically in the lab, aka the living room, which was just making rice tubes.
Yeah, man, seeing that in person was like, I think when you explained it to me, I guess I did envision it, but
yeah,
just the painstaking process that is.
Well, to be clear, I'd never invested that much time in it either, because most of my runs were maximum 4 hours. So you can normally just do one batch cook of like egg fried rice and then shove it into some little ice pop tubes.
Yeah.
And that's enough. Whereas in this scenario, you know, you're preparing for a potentially up to 30-hour adventure with trying to stick to foods that you know are the ones that work and that are safe. Which translated to a real operation between Morgan and myself of just like cooking the rice, a little bit of egg, honey, soy sauce, whipping it up, putting it into a rice tube, and then doing the same thing for little like sugar drinks, like sugar powder mix, which I was going to put into my drinks as well. We don't need to go into how many were left after the race.
We'll get to that.
But that was it. I think it was pretty exciting the day before. You know, there's a big vibe going on. We were just collecting our bibs, all of these things, you know, very nervous, very excited.
That is one of my favourite parts though.
Yeah.
Like, it's both exciting and it's both scary and exciting, but it's like it's mostly just like exciting because you're doing the thing. You also know, and we spoke about this. Once you start, that's it. You're just in the moment.
Completely goes.
Yeah. So all the anticipation, all the kind of anxiety about it, all of the overthinking. You're just thinking about that very moment. Yeah. So and that is true. Once it starts, you're just there.
It's funny because like for weeks and weeks it felt so close, and it was getting closer and closer and closer. And then about 8 p.m. or 7 p.m. when we were just sitting in the apartment waiting. We were going to drive at like 10. It never felt further away because there was just nothing to do. We were just sitting there, just like waiting.
Yeah. I think it was about 6 hours before. It was probably like 6 p.m. And I was like, okay, it's almost here, but also it was 6 hours away.
Yeah. But and then we drove to the start. That was fine. Big vibes going on. It's pitch black. There's a little bit of drizzle. The weather forecast said that it wasn't going to last that long. So I was like, okay, we didn't need to like really get too much into the gear at this point. Just put on a rain jacket. And we kick off and it's fun. It turned out the rain was not going to stop for a while. And we were just climbing up slimy mud for hours.
Wasn't that first section so mad?
And you know, it got some of us more than others.
Yeah, we've spoken at length about this.
How's it doing?
The ankle is fine. It's actually doing really well. I think I've sort of taken maybe a slight step back today because I've done about just over 2 hours in the last 24 hours of training. So take a day off tomorrow. Yeah. But I feel like it's strong. It will get back.
Yeah, and it was tough seeing you as well because when I entered that aid station and I could hear you calling my name and then I saw you and you were like, yeah, like it's over already. And I could see in your eyes, it was just so raw that you were just so disappointed because like so much energy and time goes into it. You know, it is just a sport at the end of the day, but also when you put in that much time and effort into anything, you know, you want to see it through. You want that stuff. And I did feel for you because I've been in that situation before.
I didn't know how to tell you. I was like, as everyone was coming through, I was obviously waiting. I was like, I don't want to miss Brim.
Yep.
So like the aid station was, obviously I'll describe what it was. It basically to the left was the like medical tent, and then straight forward was kind of where all of the food was, and then just a regular aid station. And so you sort of go past the medical tent and just walk straight into the regular one, unless you have an issue. So I was like calling your name. I was like, Brimmer, Ben. And I was trying not to pay. I didn't want too many people looking over at me as well.
But also the last place I'm looking is the medical tent. 20 kilometers in.
Exactly.
And and I was also going through quite a low patch at that point, like super early on, because it was so. I developed this weird cough within like half an hour of starting the race. You're just sliding up mud, and like my calves were tired and all of these things. And I was like, it was like, I don't know, 3 a.m., 4 a.m. at this point.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, if this is it, like 3 hours in, like I'm in big trouble. Then saw you, and I was like, oh God, like what's going to happen to me? And,
that first section was a brutal kind of first section of an ultra, because not only is it obviously just intense climbing from the get, like I think you probably do about 500 meters of flat running before, maybe not even that.
Well, the only flat bit is really when you go from going down to going up. And the really cool part about Madeira Island Ultra Trail, which I'd recommend to anyone to do it almost because of this, like the bottom of the first hill. There's just hundreds of people swarm onto the streets, and there's like cowbells and people singing and everyone, and it's just like you can hear it from like half a kilometer away. And then you basically walk through this just like parade of people, and then you go through them, and then you just start climbing, and then they get quieter and quieter, and it was like, it's really cool that's like a thing that they do.
Because when you start a race, you've got all this anticipation, and you're like, okay, it's started now, and usually you just go sort of straight into the mountains. This one, you have this 400 meter, what we call a bump, 400 meter bump, which was quite intimidating in and of itself, to be honest, because you're just climbing for quite a while. And then once you get to the top of that, you start hearing these bells from beneath. And because it's like so late at night or early in the morning, it's like, 1:30 a.m. You just think everyone's sort of ignoring you until the morning. But I think like all these locals just every year just sort of crowd around, which is really sweet.
It's so fantastic that they are that engaged, and they were like throughout the whole race. Obviously, like 99% of these races are just you on your own, but whenever you did go through a town or anything, like you really felt the love and support of like people that are just like, let's go, like it's awesome.
And so from that point, obviously you start going up, it's climbing, and I think there's like an addition after that 400 meter, that initial 400 meter climb. There's a good like 1600 meters or something, right, until the first aid station.
Of climbing, and it does just after the aid station where you stopped because of your ankle. It did flatten out a little bit, but you're basically going from 0 to about 1600 meters. So by the time you've reached maybe even 30k, you've done a lot, like nearly half of the climbing, just at night and just in that bit. And then from then on, you're basically like cruising downhill, and you're basically going down these like downhill mountain bike trail routes.
Sick.
At night, and you're just like stopping and people are sliding and slipping and sliding, and that was really fun. I do thrive on the downhills.
Nice.
I do really enjoy that. But it was tough on the quads, and then you get, just as I got to the bottom, and then the sun starts coming up, and at this point everything's going super smoothly, like nutrition's going well, I'm having my rice tubes, drinking my drink, and I'm just super energized. And just to make it through the night and then see the sun come up, I was like, this is great. And just right where I wanted to be. The 80Kers then joined the route, and so you got to see like all of the elites come past and them running, and that was really cool, super energizing. And then I saw Morgan at the aid station at 40K. It was the first time I saw her. Felt great, just complete business mode, swapping out the waters you do at the aid stations, have some snacks, make sure you just clean up, get rid of all of your rubbish if you've got any. So really just like hitting all the things that we've agreed. We had a little notes that we'd like written, like what our routine is at the aid station, so we can try and be smooth through that process. Morgan was great throughout the whole thing. As expected.
How often did you get to see Morgan? Was it like from your experience, was it like every few aid stations? Was it every like 3 or 4?
It was every aid station except for the first 3 and the last 3.
Oh, is that? Oh, really? Okay,
that's
I thought it was
basically-
like, okay, that's not so bad.
That's basically what it is. So where I saw you,
Yeah,
that was the last one that you
yeah.
can see them. So throughout the whole of the day, we were seeing each other every few hours.
Amazing.
Which is really fun because the best thing you can do with these races is just like break it down into chunks. And it's like, okay, when you know you're going to see someone at the aid station, it just makes such a world of difference.
Yeah.
And like also just interacting with people I love, just making a day of it.
Yeah.
It's just really fun because, it is just a sport at the end of the day, and you are out there to have an experience. And and then there's a few people that they go past you and you pass them, and I'm always like clapping them, like, let's go.
That's cool.
So aid station, next aid station, 40k, 50k, 60k, all going great. Done like most of the climbing at this point. Heading into the afternoon, a bit tired, start some caffeine chews, to try and keep me awake. Honestly, it's like really having fun, running everything that's runnable, really steady pace on the hiking, and by mid-afternoon, still feeling good, a little tired. And it was really at the end of the penultimate climb, which is where I then started to have a little bit of stomach issues, which was complete unknown for me because we're like 20 hours in at this point. We go above the cloud line and it's super hot all of a sudden.
Wow.
And I've still got my rain jacket on because it was raining like half an hour before. And
that's how you avoid rain. You just climb above it.
You just gotta go. Yeah, exactly. And so get to the top, and it's just going and going, and it's just one of those, because it's like, I think it was an 1,800 meter climb, and so you get to the top, and as you top out, there's just more to go and more to go and more to go. And then when I got to the top, took off my jacket probably a bit too late, and that was where I vomited the first time. And it kind of came a little bit out of nowhere, but as soon as I did it, I was like, I feel way better now. Like, this is great. And I did it, and then I took some food down and some drink, and I was like, this is nothing to worry about. This feels like a very manageable thing. And you're at the top. Take a video, have some fun, cruise down. Yeah. And that cruise down from 1,800 meters down to, I think it was at like 80k aid station. I was only, starting to feel tired, but still running it in. Got to the aid station.
And what time of day is this now?
We're probably I've started the caffeine chew, so it's probably about 5 p.m.
Okay, so it's still light.
Still light.
Yeah.
Been going for, like 17 hours at this point.
Yeah, right.
And there's enough energy coming in that can just have this perpetual motion. So even though would have depleted whatever was just stored in my body, constantly eating and constantly drinking just means you can just constantly keep going. It's just fueling a car whilst you're driving, kind of thing. And now I am at, I think it was like 75k or 80k, get into the aid station, and I'm like kind of nibbling on food. It's like, I knew I should eat more, and Morgan was trying to make me eat more, but I was also very conscious of my stomach at this point. We're very fine on time, so let's just take it easy, have a little break, and feeling like how you would expect to feel at that point, which you've got to remind yourself, like, there's nothing actually hurting, it's just sore. And that's like a great position to be in. And so I was just very energized by that, still being like right where I want to be. This is great.
And at this point, is this like the longest, we're 18 hours in or so, is this the longest now that you've gone for a very long time without having like any serious
for sure
issues?
We're number one, uncharted territory. I think the longest run I've done before was 17 hours, which is Trans-Gran Canaria,
right? Yeah, the
80k. So uncharted territory there, but also it's the furthest I've ever gone without having stomach issues.
Yeah.
And for me, that was just so validating to be going through these motions. And yes, I did chunder at the top of the mountain, maybe heat, I don't know, but just to feel like relatively strong at that point.
Yeah.
Is very vindicating for all of the work and the effort that you put into this hobby.
Yeah.
That it works. And dude, real food.
Yep.
Way to go. I'm on a mission against Big Gel now. I'm going to take him down, whatever it takes.
with your rice tubes.
With my ice pop rice tubes, exactly.
Potentially fermenting within 24 hours.
Yeah. Just keep them in the fridge. Also, top tip is definitely when you're batch cooking rice, make sure you dry the pot before cooking the next batch, because what I discovered about 3 rice tubes in is that at least a third of my rice tubes tasted of dish soap because I hadn't washed out the dish soap properly.
Oh.
And that actually contributed a lot to the low point I had quite early on.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can't believe I just scored this own goal. That I'm having like.
That was the first thing you said to me.
Yeah.
When I saw you at the aid station, I was like, I've got a DNF, I got this ankle issue, and you're like, well, I'm drinking fairy liquid. So
At a certain point in these events, like shame goes out of the window completely, right? Because you are. It's so ridiculous what you're doing and what you're wearing and everything, and then just like eating fairy liquid rice. I was like,
what is my life?
What is my life? Can't believe I'm doing this by choice. I got over it after a while. I was just like, I just told myself to enjoy it, basically. And it was only about a third of them. So it was actually quite a nice joy to like when I ripped one open and it was
a respite.
Like, it was like, oh, cool. This is a nice one.
This is what it's supposed to taste like.
Yeah. My food intake now at about 18 hours started to go down a bit because I am a bit conscious of my stomach and all these things. So fully vindicated, like really working. I've always had such a sensitive stomach, and I'm very proud of the continued effort to get over that. But at this point, we're in uncharted territory. There's nothing you can really do to know how to do it other than just problem solve.
Mm-hmm.
The sun starts setting, and we go down, and now it's the final climb. And I know you and Morgan are at the top, and I was like, that's great. Such a good motivation.
Yeah, so at this point, I'd spent the day moping around, feeling sorry for myself.
And you saw Lou at her event.
Yeah, so I got home at like 9:30 a.m. having just gone for a night run and then come back with an injury, and then was sort of had a bit of a 2-hour sleep, but I was too scared of missing Lou finish her marathon that I was just like all over the place. Managed to watch Lou finish her marathon, which is great. And then Morgan messaged and was like, I'm going to come via the flat if you two want to like come join at the final aid station that you can join. And I was like 100%, like I'm definitely coming out. And I think at that point you were scheduled to come in at like midnight or something to that aid station.
Probably around then, yeah.
But yeah, Lou was justifiably so pretty tired from her marathon, so stayed back at the flat. And yeah, I joined Morgan, drove over, and do you know what? It was like I had mixed emotions myself, because obviously I didn't know, I had no experience of the rest of the race, and so like coming and seeing what I should have seen in my I was like, oh man, so this is it. This is like one of the final aid stations. This is what I would have seen. This is what I was thinking to myself, like this is where I would have been. I wonder how I would have felt when I got to this point, because getting to this point would have, if everything would have gone well, this would have been like home straight territory. Yeah. And I was sort of like, oh man. Bit mixed emotions in a weird way, but I was excited to just see you come in, and I knew that you had, at that point I think I knew that you had started having trouble with your stomach, and so I was just hoping that we could basically get you to a level that you were, where we were able to kind of just push you down the hill. But yeah, we waited around chatting away, and then eventually you turned up, and the first thing you said was, we got some problem solving to do. I've just puked up twice in the last 3 hours, so I'm at net negative on calories, and we need to figure out how to get some calories in me and have them stay in me. So in the tent we went.
And I was really like, okay, this needs to be like pure positive thinking at this point, because once you've chunned a few times, like you have doubts, and it's very human to have doubts, but it's about pushing through, and that is what makes these races, and it's what you've got to remember. At the same time, I have pushed through and ended up in hospital before, and so there's always like that element of like, your health always comes first ultimately. And I got there. I was about the equivalent of about 7 coffees deep, and and net 500 calories, probably minus 500 calories. And I'd just done a vertical kilometer, so I'm like pretty tired at this point.
And you're 24 hours in. Well, you're 24 hours in, basically.
24 hours in,
Yeah.
6,500 meters done, which is all of the climbing. There's no more climbing left.
There's just like a little bit of accumulated. There was like 150 meters left, but that was just sort of picked up on the occasional bump in the downhill.
Yeah. And, but yeah, it's a 20 kilometers from that point downhill to the finish. So pretty straight cruising. However, in that aid station, trying to figure out what's going on, negative calorie deficit, probably my electrolyte balance is really bad, because also just taking on water is just like very hard to swallow, and all of these things, and nothing is really appetizing, even though I know I should eat. I took a few naps on Morgan's shoulder.
And actually, maybe it's best that I tell this part of the story, because you were so delirious.
I don't really. The only thing I will say is that the most shocking part of that was basically being like, okay, like, what do we do? And you were like, look, we've been here for like an hour. And I was like, what? Because it felt like about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I thought I just got there and we need to like figure out the steps to go next. But yeah, you can probably explain.
Well, yeah, I think like the next day or 2 days later, we were talking about it, and we started realizing how little of it you actually did recollect.
Yeah.
But we got in, and you obviously sat down, and both Morgan and I were like just asking questions like, what do you feel like? And I think for a second you just wanted a moment, which was fair. And I just reassured you we've got loads of time, and we had loads of time. I think we had like 5 hours before that aid station's cut off.
Yeah.
So we were good. We were, completion.
We were cruising the whole race.
Yeah, like, completion was the main aim, and ultimately you had loads of time to do that. So in my mind, I was sort of like, we can just stick around for ages, and the sort of what I thought would be a good idea would to just be find food that you can stomach, and then just wait for ages for you to essentially fully digest that food, and kind of, because I think a lot of the time you'll take on food and then you'll start exerting loads of energy before that food's really settled, and that can trigger things.
Yeah, and I think going on the uphill, that was a little bit like, on reflection, I think if you get to that point, obviously preventative is the best measure. You never want to be in a calorie deficit, but when you are, perhaps I felt a need to continue moving, when a better option would have been actually just to take a break for like 10 minutes. And then just recollect yourself, because I didn't do that until the aid station, basically, when maybe it was too late.
Yeah, and we were offering you loads of things, and you were basically saying, I definitely don't feel like any of that. And we gave you a Powerade. That was the first thing. The Powerade was the first thing that you said, okay, yeah, let me try that. And you're taking sips, very small sips, but you were taking sips of the Powerade. And I was like, that's good. That's like got electrolytes in it. It's hydrating. Yeah. That's a great start. And then it was Pringles. We listed a bunch of things, and then Pringles, your eyebrows popped, and you're like,
yeah,
do you know what? Yeah, I could scrounge up a Pringle.
Shout out Pringles, original.
Yeah. And he took like the smallest bite. I was like, start slow, the Pringle. And then you were like, and actually it was about 25 minutes in that you first suggested, maybe should I take a nap? And you sort of turned to me and was like, should I take a nap? And I was like, if you feel like taking a nap, you've got time, you can take a nap. And so you did. You just like took a nap you fell asleep within 10 seconds on Morgan's shoulder. And I've got like pictures of Morgan holding you, and then like, so shout out to Morgan and any crew out there.
Yeah, man, they're the heroes.
They're the heroes.
And people at the aid station that are just like letting you have this experience and helping out.
Yeah, and like other people in the aid station watching you like retch in the aid station, and just being like, he's got his people, he's kind of fine.
Yeah.
In any other context, people would crowd around and be like, are you okay? But in that context, they're just like, he's dealing with his thing.
Yeah, and it is funny when I trundled up the hill, like one person was passing me and they were like, are you okay? And I'm like, I've been here before, man. And he just gives me a thumbs up and then just keeps going.
Yeah.
He's suffering as well.
And And then it was just kind of like in and out of you were just very delirious and tired, clearly. And so you slept a couple of times, and you'd come out, and then you'd try a bit of a Pringle, and then you'd sleep again, and it was just a lot of that. And I think it just got to a point where, because Morgan and I know that you'd had an agreement with Morgan, you'd had a chat, and you'd said, like, I need you to, I know it's going to be difficult, and you can correct me here, but like, I think what the impression I got was that you'd had a chat with Morgan and said, I know it's going to be difficult because you will just want to take me home, but I want you to push me. I want you to kind of lean in to the going for it option.
Yeah.
And so she was doing that, and I never want to plant seeds of quitting in your head. And I think I said that to you at one stage. I remember, like, we were both crouching down next to you, and I said, look, the reality is we're in a situation where neither of us want to tell you what you should do, but we really do need you to start
to make
like
a decision.
Deciding now.
Yeah. Because for me, this is like 10 minutes into the experience, but you guys have been here waiting for like an hour.
Yeah, and it's not, and it's not the case. It's not the case that we cared about waiting. It was more the case that
something
not much had happened in that time.
Yeah.
Like, no, we hadn't seen much progress in terms of like whether you'd started digesting anything or feeling like anything.
Yeah. And you know, it's cold as well.
Yeah.
And
you were shivering.
Dark, and it's shivering, and there's a little bit of drizzle, and at that point, you know, that's really like where you exercising your demons of like, there is always everyone from the elites to the average runner, you have doubts.
Yeah.
And particularly in these races, you've got so much time to go through every single possible door that's available, of which one of them is stop, and the other one is keep going, and all of everything in between, which is like keep going and go to hospital, or stop even if you know you could have continued, and all of these things. But ultimately, you know, I could feel cramping in my hand, and I could feel a lot of the signs that I'd had the summer before, where at a much earlier stage, the same thing happened, where I was throwing up and then ended up needing an IV drip, basically just to get hydration in me. And you know, I love this sport and I love running, but like there was never the intention to go to hospital, you know. And if that was going to become part of this routine of this ritual of these races, like, I was not interested. And that's part of why I went on this journey of like trying to understand my body more and discovering natural foods and all these things that did work. Obviously I still have a sensitive stomach, but we're working through it, training it just like any other muscle. But ultimately, you know, I do remember you were like, look, just stand up and go walk around the table, see how you feel. And at least from my recollection, I stood up, I walked around the table, I chunded, and I think at that point it was like, okay, this 20 kilometers, which is potentially going to take a couple hours, a few hours, is just like not feasible, because I'm going to be doing it on nothing, and you can't run a car with no fuel at the end of the day. Yeah,
actually it got to a point where, and the one thing that you did keep sort of re-clarifying, because you sometimes we'd talk to you and you'd like nod off. So you'd nod off, and then you come back to, and then you'd be like, I just don't want to go to hospital. We're like, yes, that is actually quite clear from you. You had this clarity that you just, like, the one thing you didn't want to do was sort of get yourself to a point that you were going to hospital. And I think I remember saying to you, look, you kind of have two options, and that is we can stop now, or we can send you out having not had any real calories go in, except like maybe an entire Pringle. I think it was maybe half a Pringle.
Half a Pringle, yeah.
So you're looking at half a Pringle and like maybe...
And they pack a punch though, to be fair.
Yeah.
But half a Pringle nonetheless.
Yes, but half a Pringle. And like maybe like an inch of Powerade or something. Yeah. I was like, so your two options are we stop now and you're ultimately safe and we take you home, or you go out and we roll a dice. And what I meant by that was, we don't know whether you can actually make it to the next aid station without like real problems.
Yeah.
And really the reason I was saying we're rolling a dice is because we don't know if you go out based on your walk around the table, we don't know if you go out and that triggers just basically like unstoppable chundering and retching to a point where you do need to go to hospital, and
which has happened twice.
Which has happened twice.
Yeah.
And so if we were being smart about it and we were just looking at all of the evidence and history, it was becoming pretty clear that like I remember kind of distinctly going from, I don't want to influence a decision at all, and I want to just encourage that you carry on. And all of my tone was...
Yeah, you were great.
All of my tone was like, I was trying to like, just, we're not entertaining a DNF. Like, this is what we're doing.
It's problem solving.
Yeah, this is what we're doing. Like, I'm sorting out your race pack. I'm making you feel like we're going. But then it did get to a point where it turned in my head and I was like, I think I need to advise against going now, because it suddenly occurred to me that it was 1 a.m. or something, and it was pretty cold out. It was obviously dark. We were on the mountains, and there weren't heaps of runners knocking about anymore. And I was just like, I actually think it's getting to a point where it's quite dangerous.
And the thing also is like your body needs energy to keep itself warm as well.
You were shivering.
It's not just to keep moving, but it's also just to keep your body warm. So at this point, when it is so cold, you know, you have to use whatever energy you have, which is minus 500 calories, to not just move, but to keep yourself warm as well. Otherwise, you're just like shivering into oblivion. So that was it at the end.
And so you eventually did say, I think we have to stop.
Yeah, had a good nap in the car.
Yep, whacked on some Elijah Fox.
Yeah, and woke up the next morning so disappointed.
Yeah.
You know, you do put in all this energy to complete it ultimately, and it's not that I felt like I was going to stay in that space, but you know, you need to make space for the disappointment, because that is a natural human emotion. But it did throughout the day dissipate, I think, quite quickly, and like on reflection, you just have to ultimately be grateful for like the whole experience. And you know, it is a day that you spent, you know, in the mountains with friends, you know, with Morgan, exploring, having this insane adventure, and you know, that's all I want from a day, you know. And I've come out of it more energized, I think, to do well in these things. I think we had a discussion. It was just like, you know, I want to be good at this. I'll be better. And so many positives came out of that event that I'm just super energized to keep going. I feel like you're in a similar boat also, with like a lot of untapped potential, let's say. Yeah,
I mean, you know, I won't bore the listener if they'd listened to the last episode on all of my reflections, but I think similar to you, there's the disappointment and frustration, and that is not only okay, but like almost necessary to go through. And then there's the kind of reframing and the excitement and the desire that you have to work harder.
And ultimately, like, whether I finish the race or not, like knowing that you're already enough with or without the race, just as you, it's like it makes you appreciate the experience, that you are enough as a person, and you're doing enough, and you know, these are incredible opportunities to just explore and perform and all of these things, but ultimately they are experiences, because life is just one big experience.
100%. I mean, I think it's really helpful to present the reframing, and I completely agree that you are enough, and it is just a sport, and we're so privileged to be able to do it. But talk a little bit more about like what actually was going through your head when you were really feeling disappointed, when you were really going through the like, I've DNF'd another race, I had stomach issues. What was going through your head, and what made it really feel really frustrating?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can put everything under the umbrella of like disappointment, ultimately, and then to really kind of like double down on a lot of that, you have so much time and effort put in for a specific outcome, and I have learned not to be outcome based. Not because sometimes you don't reach that outcome, but whether you do or you don't, being outcome based ultimately makes you at the mercy of a lot of things outside of your control. And to be, like, say, process based and to enjoy the journey and all of these things is ultimately where I got to. But there is always a part of you that is outcome based, because it is a thing that you are doing. Ultimately, like, you are, the nature of this process is you prepare for a race and you train and then you do the race. And not reaching the finish line is disappointing in that sense. And you just have human thoughts which are perfectly willing to accept, like, are you good enough? Is this the right thing for you? Is there maybe some, like, embarrassment of, like, even considering that you could have done it and then not reaching it, and this sort of thing? There's a lot of things that go on there that I don't think should play a big part, but I'm a human being, and those things come through, and they have done negatively when the races don't go well, and positively when the races do go well. But ultimately, being outcome based, I think, is just like, it puts you at the mercy of a lot of things that are outside of your control. So then the reframing begins when you say, okay, firstly, like, what things do you have? Like, you did run 100 kilometers, 6,500 meters elevation. What are ultimately you as a person? What do you look for, and who are you? And that is, like, an outdoorsy, adventurous, social person. And I got all of those things and more during that experience, and I am fitter now because of these events than I ever would have been. And it gave me such purpose and direction throughout moving to Portugal, and then discovering the trails and doing all of these things. And then I was reminding myself the same thing that I do even in races that have gone well, which is, like, the outcome doesn't matter. Like, you are already enough, and everything that you've done was always enough in the lead up to it. You might not have done the race at all. You might have finished the race. You might have, got a time and a position better than you thought, or worse than you thought. But whether you are elite or amateur or anywhere in between, like, feeling like your self-worth depends on things outside of just who you are and the things that you do, is something that I personally would, like, never recommend, and have been on a journey to not be like that, because I think a lot of people that get into ultra running probably have some sort of psychological past that would probably be very interesting to explore. And it feels good to be, feeling worthy of yourself no matter what. And ultimately, that's what led to the best performance that I have had in terms of distance and elevation gain and all of these things. And can't wait for the next one, honestly.
So, obviously things went incredibly well, and you've ticked a lot of boxes. It's the furthest you've gone. You had the least amount of stomach issues that you've had for a very long time, or ever. But of course, it wasn't the perfect picture. We're still not done yet. We've made massive progress, and you've moved from having, like, awful nutrition to vastly improved nutrition for you. You've had some time now to kind of think, maybe about a week, to sort of think about what went right, what went wrong. Where's your head at now from a nutrition standpoint? What things are you gonna keep? What things are you gonna change? How are you gonna sort of move forward and experiment with things?
Yeah. Well, I'm very happy to say I'm going to keep a lot of things. Like the approach of natural foods as a fuel source very clearly works well with my body. Gels are effective if your body can stomach them, but they are synthetic and all of these things. And for me, that doesn't work. When it comes to hydration, I think it's more complicated than just making sure you're drinking enough, because you do need the electrolyte balance ultimately the whole time, because if you don't have the right amount of sodiums and electrolytes, your body can't absorb the water that's in your stomach, so it just sits there. That's ultimately what was happening at the end of the race. Even taking it in, if it just sits there and it doesn't actually get absorbed, then it's you might as well have not drunk it. So I think there's definitely a greater focus on the electrolyte balances. Like I had my electrolyte chews, but the one thing I haven't done really focusing on is really looking at like sweat rates to understand how much I'm losing maybe at different temperatures and this sort of thing, to make sure that I'm hydrating enough depending on what the temperature is, and making sure that my sodium levels are always high. I don't think that I had enough variety, let's say, in my food. Like I had these rice tubes and they were great and they did last a long time, but ultimately, you know, taste fatigue is a thing, and I've got to, I think, diversify a little bit what my approach is. I had some Cliff bars, but they were quite dry by the end. But things like potatoes I know have worked in the past, and so it really is a case of, like anything that doesn't quite work, is then just testing, figuring out what works, discarding what doesn't, testing it in a race, and this sort of thing. And you know, I love that. I just really enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
And I've learned much more about my body and who I am because of it. So hydration, I think, a bit more diversity in my food, and I think there's also an element of like taking your time if you are below your carb per hour target. I think I felt, because I was on track for my target time for so long, even though I knew I had time, I did kind of feel like I wanted to continue in this sort of like projection that I'd had for a few hours of like continuing at this pace. And maybe what that did is I should have stopped for like 10-20 minutes before reaching the final aid station that I got to, so that I could just take a moment, get something down, don't move your body so it has time to digest, and then use that to get to the aid station, and then the aid station to get to the next bit and the next bit and the next bit. I think that's probably a big factor as well, but for the most part, you know, really works. Definitely less dish soap, less fairy liquid.
Yeah.
You know, turns out it doesn't taste great.
Yeah, not sprinkling that on your stir fry.
Yeah.
So maybe like potato tubes.
Yeah, mashed
potato tubes.
Yeah, something like that. I think that's definitely worth trying.
You had quite a few left over. Were you not consuming enough even early on, would you say, or was it because you started having issues?
Yeah, it was when I started having issues I slowed down, and then at some point, I can't remember when, it was then like, okay, instead of one rice tube per hour, it became one rice tube every 2 hours, just because it was like, I'm just trying to get it in as fast as I can whilst knowing that it's going to settle. Yeah. And there were obviously a load made for the hours that I didn't reach as well. Yeah. So there was a lot left over there as well. But it's fun, man. You're just figuring things out, making progress, keep going, and ultimately, when I can get it down, there's then the next step, which is then like fine tuning. And you know, for as long as it's felt like I've done this, like we're both very early on in your ultra running careers to actually reach peak performance, let's say. And so much of it is about race day execution, you know. Yeah,
so much of it, man. I reckon if I was the same, I believe I'm much fitter, but if I was the same fitness now as I was 4 years ago, I still believe I'd be a much better ultra runner, just simply because of like everything I've learned about race execution.
Yeah, for sure. Which is why it's so important, if you like sports, just to like test. Yeah. And particularly, don't take anyone's advice for granted on nutrition, because everybody is so personal, but just test. And certainly people can give you some good ideas, like all these things like rice tubes and stuff have just come from pockets of different people that have tried different things. I mean, that applies also to the marathons and the 5Ks and the 10Ks and everything, really. Yeah,
and different race environments as well, different contexts, and formats can help to test things. Like it's not always easy to test nutrition in like an extremely challenging mountain race. Right. But soon we have a race coming up. Maybe we should chat about Endure 24. Yeah. We're taking it on as a pair. It's a 8K loop, and we're basically, it's 24 hours and you're just supposed to like accumulate as much distance as we possibly can together.
But it's
running one at a time.
It's a relay, right? So there's like a transition zone, and we high-five each other, and one person does the loop, and then the next person.
Yeah, which will mean that there'll be plenty of time between to, like, when you'll be running for a bit, but then you'll have time to chill out.
Yeah.
Do you think you'll be experimenting with new stuff at Enduro 24?
Yeah, I think I'm going to take it seriously, but I feel like I'm going to have more fun.
Yeah.
And I think we both got our vans that we'll just set up there, and we'll just have like a little tailgate going on with Morgan and Lou. But I think it's a great opportunity to try things, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's good having this conversation now, because then we can test different things. And there's even like stuff that you have that I'd be interested in trying, maybe vice versa. Like those caffeine chews are like fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I do recommend trying them, because it just absorbs through your mouth. It doesn't even touch the stomach at all.
Right, yeah.
Which is actually quite good. But I mean, ultimately we're there to have fun.
Yeah. And we have a fun name, which we won't reveal yet, but we're going to get t-shirts. And we've been working with ChatGPT to design a good t-shirt.
Yep.
Should be fun, man.
Yeah.
I'm actually psyched for it.
I think it's going to be so much fun, yeah. And it starts at 12, does it?
I actually
Midday?
have no idea. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. 12 till 12.
And does it have to be one after the other, or we can do a little bit, like could we do 2 laps and the other person does 2 laps?
I think we're just together, we're just like taking it on and seeing how many we can do as a team. So, you know, if one of us wants to sleep, or if one of us is having real problems, like if I'm out with some real issue, like you might want to just keep going.
Yeah.
Or if you're having a real issue, I'm just gonna take on a few hours of loops, you know, and we just play it like that. Nice. I guess.
Yeah. Do you know how many people are doing it?
I don't know exactly, but because you have like the solo people, and then you have like people doing it in pairs, and then you have big teams, so you have teams of up to like 12 people. I have heard it's a huge festival kind of vibe, and like
it's great
with loads of supporters and crowd.
It's what it's all about.
So, yeah, a real vibe. Really sort of a really fun environment. I think sometimes ultra running can seem very serious to a lot of people, but actually when you're in it, you realise that most people aren't that serious. Actually.
It's super chill.
I love the sort of events that remind you of that, and I think Enduro will be like that.
Yeah, that's gonna be great.
Cool, man. Well, congratulations. I think it was a really good effort. I've said it to you before, but I just admire your determination to just keep researching, to keep tapping away, to give it your best shot, and to not give up. I think at this point, a lot of people, if they're in your shoes, having been hospitalized twice, and to be honest, even just the experience seeing you at that aid station, I think many people would have quit at this point and said, you know what, fuck this is a joke, I'm not going to carry on. And we don't get that from you. We don't get any sort of maybe this isn't for me at all. And I admire that, and I think that's pretty inspirational.
Yeah, I likewise do. Process, not outcome.
Cheers, bro.
Cheers.
Empty.